Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks, wherever the heck in the world you are. It's V the Guerrilla Economist coming to you live with my main man, CJ, who's working the airwaves, making sure this broadcast is coming out crispy and clean, if you know what I mean. Check us out, roguenews.com. Follow us on Twitter at Real Rogue News and Rogue News on every single podcasting app known to humanity. And also, folks, check out our paid sponsors, mycbdedibles.com, mycbdedibles.com. Get your CBD edible goodness right there. It tastes fresh. It tastes clean. You know what it is all about. When you want quality CBD, go to mycbdedibles.com. And with that being said, folks, we have a special guest on. It's been a while since we had him. It's Dr. Dustin Sulak. Dr. Dustin Sulak is an osteopathic physician. He's licensed in Maine as a general practitioner. He's an expert in integrative medicine, folks. The intelligent combination of conventional and alternative approaches to healthcare. He's long been fascinated by mind-body medicine, spirituality in healthcare, and natural approaches to promoting health and healing. He's also an expert in cranial and biodynamic osteopathy, a clinical hypnotherapist, a Reiki sensei, a practitioner of Qigong and yoga, and has studied with numerous conventional and alternative healers and physicians. He also knows 36 ways to kill a man, and all of them work. He's a deadly ninja. I'm just joking on that one. But Dr. Sulak is a clinical practitioner. He focuses on treating refractory conditions in adults and children. He's received his undergrad degrees in nutrition science and biology from Indiana University, a doctorate in osteopathy from Arizona College of Osteopathic Medicine, a completed an osteopathic internship at Maine Dartmouth Family Medicine Residency, and Dr. Sulak is the founder of IntegrateHealthAndHealer.com, a medical cannabis education resource. He is a passionate teacher of clinicians, patients, and industry professionals, and he sits on the board of directors of two nonprofits focused on cannabis education. Folks, let me just tell you, Dustin's bona fides goes on and on and on. He is a certified badass when it comes to health and nutrition and targeting the human body with a balanced approach. And I'm telling you right now, he's one of the best, most brilliant minds out there. So without further ado, Dustin, welcome back, my buddy. How are you?
After that introduction, I'm better than ever. Thanks.
Ninja level medicine, folks. That's what we're talking about. Ninja level health. Dustin, where do you want to start, man? Last time you were on, we're talking about the benefits of endocannabinoids. We're talking about the cannabis industry, the recent advancements in health and nutrition. So the floor is yours, doctor. So wherever you want to take us to, especially talk about what you're doing as well, your services that you offer, and how you could help patients, even though you could be anywhere in the world, locked down somewhere. You could reach out to Dustin, and he can help you. Go ahead, Dustin.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll just start with what's been inspiring and exciting for me lately in the world of health and the world of cannabis, because there's always so much. Now, I'm 11 years into my clinical practice where almost all of my patients are using cannabis, probably about 95% of them. And I have a few other providers in the office here, and together we're seeing right now about 8,000 different patients a year. So it's a lot of experience. And we're, like always, but maybe more than ever, we're magnets for the patients that don't respond fully or at all to conventional therapy. And we get to be this kind of like jack of all trade, because we're getting patients referred by neurologists and psychiatrists and gastroenterologists and pretty much every other field in medicine. Their toughest cases filter up to us. We use cannabis and a kind of a health-oriented approach and get great results there in most, not in everyone. And I can share some of the things that are exciting to me on the therapeutic front lines. But one thing that I want to start with is that what's happening in the world right now is exacerbating a lot of problems for people. The social isolation and the stress of the election and the stress of COVID and just so many stressors right now. I feel like more than ever, cannabis is needed and healing is needed, and the community and the family and the social connections that cannabis can promote is needed. And I think we're figuring out new ways of sharing that with each other for sure. But this is a great time for cannabis. And where my mind always goes is, if we can get such good results with some of the most challenging conditions in medicine, what might we be able to do to prevent some of this? Do we have to wait for people to get really sick and have this big problem in their quality of life? Or could we take a more proactive approach and use cannabis for health promotion and disease prevention? So that's where my mind has been lately. And there's actually quite a bit of data
think his stream locked up just now. V, you still
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
So his stream locked up, and he's exactly right, V. In regards to the amount of stress that's out there, right? With the election,
Massive.
everything's taking place, and there is one clear winner from the election, and that was cannabis. I mean, if you look at some of the states, Mississippi, several states had either ballot initiatives or legislative actions that were passed in regards to cannabis. So it's a very exciting time, for the industry, and V, that I've advocated for several years. The last time we had Dustin on, it was 4 years ago, and it was a tremendous amount of information shared. He's calling me right now, V. So if you could cover the airtime for just a minute.
Yeah, no problem. Folks, I can't begin to tell you how valuable it is to have endocannabinoids. These are things that are integrative. We have those receptor sites within our bodies, and let's be honest here. Being under stress, being under lockdown, that just increases stress. Stress creates disease, and I don't need to be telling you these things to you guys because you guys already know. And disease, creates an even bigger problem. So you don't want to be diseased. You want to be healthy, and I'll tell you right now, you want to get good quality CBDs. And this is why we have our sponsors, mycbdedibles.com, where you can get the 99.997, just like the COVID recovery and survival rate, 99.997 pure CBD isolate. It's not the cheap garbage CBD that's been cut with God knows what. This is the best stuff. So you guys need to try it out. You need to, order some. CJ, is he back yet? What's going on?
Yeah, his complete system locked up. He's rebooting, and he will be coming right in, V. But there is I want to share this real quick. Get my screen back up. There we go. There's a great article up on rogue420.net, which again, a lot of people don't know. You can link from there directly from our Rogue News site. But it's a great landing page to cover everything in regards to advocacy, health conditions, and everything else. Dustin, welcome back to the show.
Thanks.
Hey, Dustin.
All right. Sorry about the technical problem there.
No worries. No worries. So I think we were talking about just all the stress, everything that was taking place, and you're seeing more people leverage cannabis to help with several medical conditions, Dustin.
Yeah, and where I was going with that is that I don't think we need to wait for people to get really sick and kind of burn through all their conventional options before coming to cannabis. That seems really backwards to me. It makes a lot more sense to prevent some of these problems and to treat proactively. So where my mind has been going a lot in my practice is how can we nip things in the bud, and how can we use cannabis to promote health and prevent disease? And so I've been thinking about that with my patients, but also looking at data that supports that concept. And there's an incredible amount. It's amazing. And I'll just give you a couple examples. One study looked at people that came into a hospital with traumatic brain injuries. And I know that's really severe. And if you divide a group of people like that into those who are using cannabis and those who aren't, the group that uses cannabis has a much lower mortality rate than the group that does not, like 2% versus 11%. And there's certainly mechanisms behind that that have been shown from animal studies, because we know cannabis protects the brain. In the case of injury, it limits the damage and speeds the healing. So that's one example. We see similar data for other really bad outcomes like heart attacks. Cannabis users tend to do better, intracranial bleeds. So there's kind of some evidence there that cannabis users might be healthier. There's also evidence that cannabis users might be less likely to utilize the healthcare system and especially utilize the expensive parts of it in certain conditions like irritable bowel syndrome. And so there's a lead there, and all of that data is happening without anyone saying, here's how to use cannabis to stay healthy. Here's how to use it to promote health and prevent disease. And that just brings me back to my other passion, which is education. So that's where I've been lately, is what can we do to get ahead of this and help people live their lives to the fullest every day without needing to get as sick.
Yeah, good stuff. And it's truly amazing when we continue to hear all the stories in regards to the quality of life that is improved, with cannabis, Dustin. And you're like, again, going back 4 years ago when we had our first discussion, and the research and everything that you've seen from different patients coming in with different conditions. And there's still several people who are yet to experience that. And I think that for the first time users in regards to medical cannabis, I think doctors, the medical profession are more open now today than ever in regards to medical cannabis. And it sounds like that you built a pretty darn good network there in Maine in regards to your efforts there.
It's amazing that the medical community has embraced me. I'm so thankful for it, and not just embrace me, but sees me as a resource. They can send me their tough patients, and then they get a follow up where the patient's doing better. I mean, that's
Wow.
Medicine is in a really sad state right now. For any medical professionals that are listening, I'm sure you understand, and for patients that interact with the system, I'm sure you're frustrated because doctors and other providers, we don't have the right tools to help people. Our tools are quite limited by this economic infrastructure and the pharmaceutical industry and so forth. And there's just a lot of burnout. The system is really crushing what I see used to be like bright, inspired, eager to help medical professionals, put them through the grinder, and they come out 5 years later, 10 years later, just burned out and really uninspired by what originally was driving them into the profession. So medicine's in a sad state. In the US, we spend, I think it's about $12,000 per capita on healthcare. It might even be more than that. It's a huge portion of our gross domestic product. And we spend more than any other developed nation per person on healthcare, yet we have the worst outcomes. If you look at all the different domains of health outcomes, we're worse than any other developed nation. So what the heck are we spending our money on and doing so bad? I mean, the system needs an overhaul. And I see cannabis as a solution, not just for patients, but also for clinicians and for the system in general.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's not just cannabis. Anything that's natural, anything that's integrated, anything that's holistic. I mean, allopathic medicine is so skewed. I mean, it's literally transformed itself a hammer looking for nails. That's basically what it is. And it's great at catastrophic situations where, you got a car accident, you severed an artery, you're bleeding out to death. But apart from that, everything else needs to look at it from a preventative viewpoint, and that's the problem. There's no money, well, that these big insurance sees with like preventative, and that's just not true. And we need to have a more holistic approach to things because I agree with you, Dustin. Things are so crazy; it's out of control. It is a bloated bureaucracy that is preventing advancements and alternative therapies and things that actually really work.
Yeah, the incentives are all wrong. And I think that's, really obvious when it comes to how we're dealing with this whole pandemic now, because anything that even mentions like supporting the immune system or, what are some natural therapies that we can do to keep you out of the hospital, like that's censored. There's not even a little bit of thought going to that in the collective conscious as far as when you look at the media and what's being covered. But that's what we so desperately need. Like if there is another wave coming, which there is every year a wave of influenza-like virus, why wouldn't there be one this year? What are we going to do to keep our elders safe, to keep ourselves healthy and productive, and to stay out of the hospital? There's evidence out there in peer-reviewed journals. There's information, but you had it right. The incentives are all wrong. There's not much money in keeping people out of the hospital, with natural cheap treatments. So, it's frustrating, but it's also exciting because there's just so much opportunity to help people. And I think that's one thing that makes me feel great. And most people, when we get a chance to spread information like you're doing on the podcast and reach new people who used to think cannabis was just a drug or cannabis was bad. And then, finally they're, surprised by their primary care who says, hey, why don't you go see Dr. Sulak? I think cannabis could help you. I mean, that's what really gets me going. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's in part why I truly, applaud your efforts and everything that you're doing with, with Healer and trying to really spread the education around. Full disclosure, I've been through some of the Healer program, need to complete it. Anytime that I get asked, like, hey, where can I get information? Where can I get resources? I send them your way. Especially in the medical community, whether it's pharmacists, nurse practitioners that are trying to understand this. Dustin, in a recent report, and especially from this past election, the clear winner was obviously cannabis, which was legalized in a few other states and the growth. And now most recent report put out that the support of cannabis legalization on a national level is upwards of 68%, which is at an all-time high. So people are finding out about it, and it's a very exciting time, and in particular getting back to more of something that's just so natural.
It gives me a lot of hope. I do feel like cannabis is such a solution for so many of our larger problems. Just the way that cannabis works in the body and this holistic balance promoting effect. You know, it's gentle, but it's powerful, and it can work in all of our systems and kind of help tie them together and create balance. It does that at a broader level, right? It does that in the family system. It does that in the community. I think it can do that in the political and economic system and the whole society. And I don't want to make it sound like cannabis is going to solve all of our problems, but it can help soften the impact of some of our greatest challenges and provide the creativity that we need to overcome some of these problems and pave the way for other potent solutions like psilocybin, which had a major win in Oregon. And that's another powerful medicine that's like just so perfectly suited to some of our biggest needs right now as a species, as a humankind.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, the whole thing is, it's, you know, people saying, oh, America's got a, you know, coronavirus pandemic, blah, 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 blah. I think we have a health issue. We have a serious obesity problem. I mean, we have for decades, look at the average American, decades and decades and decades of processed foods, decades and decades and decades of unhealthy lifestyle. The standard American diet, SAD, sad. It is very sad when you look at it. These are the habits, and what we've created is a population that is severely unhealthy. We're the most over-medicated population in the world with the highest amount of psychotropic drug use. Our gut biome on an average American is completely trashed. Look at this. And people are wondering why the healthcare costs are so high. People are wondering why people are dropping dead from colds, from flus, and even from something as the COVID. We've become very irresponsible in how we take care of our bodies, our health, and likewise how we take care of our countries. But go ahead, Justin.
That's it. I mean, that's it. You hit the nail on the head there. It's a healthcare pandemic. It's not just a coronavirus pandemic. And isn't it beautiful though that the solution is like right in our hands, right? Like every time we eat a meal or skip a meal, we have that option. That's our power. And I think the reason a lot of people don't exercise that power is that they're disconnected from themselves. Like this is in so many ways about our relationship with our own health. And if we're not used to sensing, feeling, interacting with, communicating with the health that's inside of us, then we're neglecting that relationship, and we might not make those choices. And again, we come back around to cannabis, this great integrator. So many people come to me now wanting to use cannabis without getting high, without getting stoned. That's the number one request. A lot of elders, a lot of people that have never used cannabis or not in decades. And I say, fine, we can do that. We can treat your pain or your anxiety. You don't have to be stoned. That's no problem. But then when they follow up, I usually give a little nudge like, hey, that nighttime dose of THC that's working so well to help you sleep? Why don't we try taking that like a few hours before bed and maybe kick the dose up even a little higher, see what you feel. And they come back and say like, that's what it is. They had built it up in their mind like it's going to be some psychedelic experience, or they're going to feel like really drunk or something. And they're like, well, that was like a glass or two of wine, but more enjoyable. And I got to like, this feeling of connection to everything around me, or I got this unique perspective on my challenges, and I had some creative solutions. You hear that all the time from the consciousness shift that cannabis can provide, which I am still convinced is one of its most powerful healing aspects. So yeah, it's great for pain and inflammation and anxiety and a lot of other things because it can bring our physiology back into balance. But I don't think anything's more profound than what it can do to our perception and our consciousness. And I just want to say, like, if we change our perception, our internal chemical environment shifts instantly. The stress hormones change, the sex hormones change, levels of inflammation change, our ability to clean up and eliminate the waste products in our body. All of that is different as soon as we shift and see things instead of threatening, we see things as an opportunity. Or instead of distress, it becomes a great challenge. That internal shift is ours to have, and I think it's one of the gifts of cannabis.
Yeah, that's awesome. Dustin, in your work, have you been documenting in terms of either different strains or terpenes? That's one of the questions that gets asked, most often is in regards to the health condition, and then looking at the science behind the cannabis. What has that research taken you in your journey with cannabis?
So, the thing that's been most exciting to me and that I've been most impressed with clinically are using the acidic cannabinoids. For a long time, we thought that THCA, which is the precursor of THC, is kind of the inactive form, and you have to heat it and decarboxylate it, and then it becomes active as THC. And so a lot of people don't even know that, right? You could go out to my backyard a couple months ago and pick a cannabis flower and eat it raw, and you're not going to get high because there's very little THC there. It's almost all THCA, which works very differently in the body. Take that same flower and put it in the oven for a half hour and then eat it, and you're going to have a very different experience. So what I've been finding, first of all, is that THCA and CBDA are not the inactive forms. They're far from inactive. They're just a little bit different, and the efforts to eliminate them are really misguided. So what we've been doing is including these in our treatment plans and seeing people get better results at lower dosages and faster healing and a more diverse ability to target some of the symptoms people are having. So I like to include some THCA. THCA is very different than THC. There's almost no overlap there in their activities in the body, but we know that THCA is highly absorbable. You don't need much. Tons of it gets into the blood, maybe 10 or even 50 times more than THC when it's taken orally. So, one easy way to get THCA is like cannabis tea. Take a little bud, doesn't have to be much, throw it in your mug and either pour hot water over it or pour your coffee over it or whatever and drink it. You're not going to get much THC from doing that because THC is not really soluble in water, but the THCA is. And the heat from the hot water or the boiling water isn't, with that brief 5-minute steeping period, it's not enough to convert much of that to THC. So that's a great way to go about it. And then CBDA, which I've been super excited about, is it's a lot like CBD. It's almost the same as CBD, except way more potent. One of the big differences between CBD and CBDA is that a lot of people will use CBD to kind of mitigate some of the power of THC. If THC is getting them too stoned or it's just a little too strong, you can add some CBD to it and that makes THC more tolerable. But I've also known people that love THC. They love CBD, but they don't want the CBD to make their THC requirements go up. They don't want to diminish the power of THC. And so CBDA does not do that. So CBDA hits a lot of the targets of CBD. It affects the serotonin system and the TRPV1, which is a pain and inflammation regulatory system, and many of the other things that CBD does. CBDA will also do that and more potently. But what CBDA does not do is affect how THC works in the body and impact our endocannabinoid system. So it's a beautiful medicine. You can get it from raw hemp flower. In our new Healer CBD products, we include CBDA in there because it's just what we're hearing from people is they're using a fraction of the dose that they needed when it was exclusively CBD. And now when they have the CBDA in there, it's just so much more potent. So that's really what I'm excited about. Terpenes, I think, are hard to pin down. And I think a lot of people, we're looking at terpene profiles, and we can see strains that have very different effects, subjective effects reported by the patient, but the terpene profiles look fairly similar. And I'm just assuming that what I see on a terpene report is like the tip of the iceberg. I think there's a lot more we need to figure out about these trace constituents and how this impacts the difference from one cannabis variety to the next. So I'll be totally honest with you there. I don't know what to make out of terpenes, and I don't know how to predict how strains are different. I think it's still a great mystery.
That's awesome. That's awesome. V, do you have anything? Because I have a follow-up question to that.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I'm just so excited for this conversation. So along the lines of that, Dustin, can you talk a little bit around, because there for quite a while now, it's changing. People were in the belief that, we want to, the most THC possible and everything. Is there any concern in regards to CBD or THC tolerance? And have you seen that in your patients? And if so, what's the best course of action when that does take place?
Yeah, great question. So absolutely, both people can build tolerance to both THC and CBD, but it tends to happen at quite a different dosage. And because CBD is so forgiving, we might not see tolerance building until people are getting like into the triple digits or higher, meaning 100 milligrams or 200 milligrams per dose. So it's a lot less concerning with CBD, but it does happen, and CBD's got these wacky dose response effects up at the higher dosages. One example is that there was a study that compared 150 milligrams, 300 milligrams, and 600 milligrams of CBD for an anxiety, it was basically a public speaking test, and they measured anxiety levels. And 300 worked better than 150, and 300 worked a lot better than 900. It actually worked better than clonazepam. So that's one example where more is not always better. But who's up in that dosing range? I think where it's really more clinically applicable is with THC, because what I see for a lot of people is once they get above, it's different for everyone, but maybe somewhere between that 20 and 30 milligrams of THC per dose. Once they start going above that, they're going to start dose escalating more and more and losing efficacy because they're building tolerance to the THC. And that's not a good thing in most cases, because if you're building tolerance to THC, you're also building tolerance to your endocannabinoids, right? Your inner pharmacy is making THC-like compounds all the time for very important reasons, to keep you healthy and keep you in balance. You don't want that system to become desensitized and downregulated. You want that system working really well. But another gift from cannabis is that THC tolerance can be reversed in a very short time. So, I mean, the simple method is just take a 48-hour break. And this has been studied in men with functional MRIs, and they show that heavy cannabis users that have built tolerance, after just 48 hours, their brain starts making more CB1 receptors, and they become sensitive to THC again. Another thing that I've offered on my healer.com website, which is free patient education, there's a program there called sensitization. So if you go under dosage programs, you'll see it. And it's the sensitization protocol. And it basically walks people through, like, I'm going to hold your hand and walk you through a 6-day program, which includes 2 days of cannabis abstinence and then 4 days of careful dosing to figure out what's your optimal dose. So don't feel bad if you've built tolerance to cannabis. Know that you can reverse it quickly. And if you go through this protocol, you're going to come out on the other side like just totally dialed in with your optimal dose. And what do I mean about optimal dose? You can use that dose for years or decades with no tolerance building. It will stay active. It will stay effective. And if you mess it up a little bit, just know that cannabis loves you and can help. These are signals, right? When people get an overdose from cannabis or when they lose efficacy from cannabis, this is feedback from your relationship with the medicine that's pointing you towards a healthier balance with the medicine. That's all that it is. It's just feedback.
Awesome.
Doc, last bit. Nootropics is a hot topic, and cognitive function is a very big thing, especially when we're getting older. Can you share with us some of your takes on nootropics and what people could do for enhancing their cognitive abilities, and also the link between cognition and gut biome?
Yeah, great point. There's such a huge link there. So I think that we are often in this mindset where, like, let's go look at external things that can make us feel better. And to some extent, I'm fine with that, because we are living in such a bizarre environment where there's all this isolation and alienation, and our food and water and air are full of toxins, and there's high stress. And hey, it's okay to rely on external helpers. I'm totally good with that. And I think let's not neglect a system that can produce these things for us, that's going to be more precise and safer and more effective than anything we can do from the external. So, I think if we're looking at nootropics, let me ask you first about your quality of sleep and how much exercise you're getting. And if you're doing it, maybe even just 5 or 10 minutes of meditation or savoring or mindfulness a day, like, are you working your mind in a way that's going to promote that balance? Because what happens when you run out of that bottle of whatever it is, and there's so many out there for relaxation or for focus or for mental performance. So I'm a huge fan of tapping our inner resources first. But what am I seeing as far as cognition and performance and preventing neurodegenerative conditions like dementia, Alzheimer's? I hate to sound like a broken record, but cannabis is there and the data is there. I mean, you can give rodents that are toward the end of their life and showing signs of early dementia, you can give them tiny, tiny doses of THC. You guys wouldn't believe how little THC it takes to make that rodent act young again. they perform like a young rodent on the memory test, and then when you check their genetic expression, it looks like a 2-month-old mouse instead of a 24-month-old mouse. So like,
Wow.
we've got this right in our hands. Like, let's use some of that. But some of the other basics, I think a lot, if people are not getting enough vitamin D in the winter time, like that's a great place to start. It makes people feel like they have energy. So, instead of zooming in on like specifically what can I do to tune up my mind, is it theanine for relaxation or 5-HTP for depression, or, all of these peptides and other compounds, like I like to zoom out a little bit and let's talk about the big things here. If you're not getting sun exposure, are you getting some vitamin D? If you're not getting sleep, what can we do to help with sleep? And if you're not getting exercise, then it's probably because you're uninspired and you don't enjoy the types of exercise you know how to do. Let's get you into something that you freaking love, so that every morning you wake up and say, I can't wait to do this today. And it is going to get me breathing heavy and get me sweating and heart rate up. And that's going to make all the difference. So that's kind of how I approach health.
Yeah, that's awesome. Dustin, let's jump into Healer. Let's walk us through the programs that you have here. Let's talk about your new and exciting products, all that kind of great stuff, please.
Okay, sure. So, Healer's goal, basically what we did was take some of the proceeds from our medical practice and say, like, how can we solve problems in the cannabis world? And clearly the problem solver in cannabis has always been education, and it still is. So first thing we did was put on all the patient education, and I designed that so that if you're in a legal market where you have access to dispensaries and lots of products, or if you're illegal growing in your backyard, it doesn't matter. Like, you can use these dosage programs to get good results. If your doctor knows nothing about cannabis and you're tired of Googling and getting different answers, just check out healer.com. It's got a program for people that are brand new to cannabis, for experienced users that have built tolerance, for people that only smoke and want to learn how to dose it orally. It's got all that on there. So that's those are the dosage programs in the cannabis education. Then we got a lot of requests for training for people in the industry. So a training program for dispensary agents, for industry professionals. We have a few hundred clinicians that are in this training program, and it's not free, it's paid, but it's really high value. So there's an online curriculum, and then we do these monthly webinars, which are so fun. We've got a really active community, and every month I get on there and talk about 4 or 5 papers that have come out in the last month in scientific journals that I think are interesting and clinically relevant, and then we talk cases and answer questions. It's really good stuff. So then the newest part of Healer is our products. And so we came out first with a hemp line. I mean, this is hemp that was grown near my house in a farm that grows it organically. I watched it being grown. I went out to the field and cut a few down. We process it with a cold ethanol grind that really gets everything out of the plant. And then we put it through these nano filters that we developed to make it really clean from any proteins or biologic contaminants, but we also really keep in all the medicinal compounds, and then we switch from ethanol over to an oil. We do a solvent exchange method. Anyways,
Wow.
It's great stuff. So our CBD, people are saying, hey, I'm taking a fraction of the dose. And like I mentioned before, and that's because if you look closely at that bottle, it says 6-to-1 CBD to CBDA. So it's about 15% CBDA. And then we also have a CBDA product as well that is, it's strong stuff. So
That's
if you like,
awesome.
if you love CBD and you don't want it to mess with your effects of THC at all, or you just want to see if you can use something more powerful for a lower dose, check out the CBDA. And then the last thing, this is what I'm so excited about. If you could pull up healercannabis.com. We don't have a link to it because we're being careful, but Healer Cannabis are the THC containing products, which right now are only available in Maine, and 4 of the products are available in Maryland. But I'll tell you, what you're looking at right here has been in my heart and in my imagination, sitting on the shelf of my office for the last 8 years, just wishing that my patients had access to the formulas that I developed and that I want them to use for best results. And finally, it's come true, and we have delivery in Maine. I mean, it's just a dream come true. I'm so thankful for what we've got here. So we've got capsules, we got a really clean vape cartridge, and then we've got the variety of oils, which I think with this formulary, pretty much anyone can get the results that they're looking for. I cannot imagine anyone with a health condition that would come to me and say, can you help me with this? I think, probably 99% of the time the answer is yes. The question is this a huge help, or is this a little help, or somewhere in the middle? Is it a miracle? But it's so rarely, no, this has not helped me at all. I mean, that is just so rare in my practice. So you can tell I'm getting jazzed up here. It's nice to have.
Awesome. It's
nice
amazing
to have our
work.
own products. Yeah.
It's amazing work, and it's very well deserved for the amount of years that you put into your practice and the amount of years in your research. So congratulations on that, Dustin. That's phenomenal.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask you something. You know, one of the biggest things that, again, I'm getting older. I'm not in my 20s anymore. I no longer look like Mr. Olympia. So I'm carrying a lot more pudge these days, a lot more pudge. But here's the deal. One of the biggest problems that I face, especially when I'm talking to individuals and stuff, and a quick background on me, I have a degree in clinical nutrition from Montclair State. And I did like 1,600 hours of clinical work in hospitals, and I've seen the absolute aberration of the way, they're, I mean, my God, here's a person, he's got, second and third degree burns, he's in a negative nitrogen balance, okay, let's stabilize him, and then what are we going to do to help him recover? Well, let's feed him Ensure. I mean, just ridiculous, right?
It's toxic sludge they're feeding people in hospitals. It's crazy.
Exactly. And that's when I was like, you know what, this is ridiculous. And, I didn't do anything with it, even though I graduated with a degree with it. But it helped me for my own personal thing and whatnot. So I've always had a love and passion for health and fitness. And I've spent 15 years in the fitness industry as well before I got into the whole finance game. But here's what I want to ask you. One of the biggest problems right now that's facing men in this country is testosterone levels. And because there's so many things within the food, the water, the plastics, the environment, the toxins, all of these hormone disruptors, endocrine disruptors that are being bombarded within the male endocrine system, we're seeing quality sperm production fall off the cliff in Western men, especially in the United States. We're seeing testosterone levels plummet. Okay, I mean we're pulling testosterone levels for guys in their late 20s and 30s, and it's coming up in 300 nanograms per deciliter of blood, 250 nanograms per deciliter of blood. Basically, an average for what you would find years ago in an 80-year-old male.
That's right.
What would you think? What can we do? Because I believe this because we've gotten so, and folks, it's linked. If you guys are listening to this and you're not making the connections between how you treat your body, how do you treat your health, and that correlates to how you treat your community. That correlates to how do you treat your neighbor, your town, your city, your state, your country. It's all linked. If this was a healthy population, it will be a more educated population. It'll be a more vigilant population. We would not be getting played the way we get played from the political and financial powers that be, so to speak, right? So
yeah,
what can we do for men's health, for testosterone levels, to get us going again, man? Because it's crazy out there, and a lot of guys are turning to exogenous hormones like testosterone therapy and injections and this, that, and the other. But we all know the risks that go along with that. So, Doc, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a great point. I want to add to the problem list that you had is that kind of demasculinization in our culture, right? It's not cool to be macho and strong and powerful and have lots of sex, but that used to be pretty desirable. But I feel like now that's kind of looked down upon, oh, don't be too masculine. So what the heck is going on here? So first of all, we can avoid some of the problems that you brought up. Bottled water, what? Come on, bottled water. It's basically tap water that's flavored with endocrine disrupting plastic additives. We don't need that. Get yourself a decent filter. Fill your own glass or stainless steel, whatever kind of bottle. That's not going to leach nasty stuff into your water. So a lot of the bisphosphonyl A and the phthalates and some of the pesticides that disrupt the endocrine system also interrupt the endocannabinoid system. There's a lot of overlap there. So you want to stay away from those foods. And the other thing is you cannot stay away from them entirely. So then we look at our capacity for detoxification and elimination. And, probably the easiest, most effective thing that has a huge amount of data behind it is supporting longevity and quality of life is to sweat. So if you can get yourself into a sauna or exercise to the point where you're sweating, or even if it's a hot Epsom salt soak, there's just make sure that you're sweating profusely at least a couple times a week. And that's one of the best detox systems that we can have, besides staying regular and making sure that you're eliminating well. So then the other thing is it's just intense exercise and intense activity, I think, is really important for our hormonal health, men and women, and for our libido and our zest for life. And again, it can't be something that you force yourself to do. Animals, you can give them the ability to run on a wheel when they want to. And if you test them before and afterwards, these rodents, voluntary exercise is associated with increased levels of endocannabinoids and other biochemical changes associated with decreased stress and increased health. Okay, if you make the animal do that same exact activity, if you force it to do that, you get the opposite effect. Stress hormones go up, endocannabinoids go down. It's stressful. Now, rodents don't force themselves to run on a wheel, but sadly, humans do. We got this idea that what we've seen someone else do, or some other expert has told us to do this, and this is going to be healthy for us. And we kind of force that upon ourselves, even though we might not really be enjoying it. That's right. Stress. So, I guess what am I boiling this down to is be yourself. Try to shed these layers of shoulds, ought tos, have tos, supposed tos that you've assimilated from the rest of society. Figure out who the heck you are, be yourself, and you're probably going to find something that you really enjoy, like an active sex life, a lot of vigorous activity, and sweating and other things like that. I will say that if people are testing low for testosterone, a great place to start, besides these lifestyle interventions we were just discussing, is to look at your DHEA level. This is a precursor to testosterone. It's quite safe. It's over the counter. If your DHEA is low, you can supplement that, and that's probably going to gently raise your testosterone level without needing injections and prescriptions that you certainly can.
Which also right, because all those endogenous stuff, exogenous stuff, that shuts down your endogenous production of testosterone. Where I talked to so many guys like, I'm on testosterone cypionate. Doctor's giving me like 1 IU a week or whatever, right? And as soon as they get off, they got to go on a post-cycle therapy, and I'm like,
you're a slave to the system. Yeah, make your own friggin' testosterone. Like, you see healthy people in their 70s and even 80s with a great sex life, and when they're living inspired. I just want to emphasize this: shift your perception, shift your mind, and your internal chemistry, including your hormones, changes almost instantly. Like within 5 minutes or certainly an hour, you could measure hormonal differences based on a shift of perception, and that's really when you're not producing these hormones, when you're not feeling your best, that's feedback from your life saying you're doing something wrong. Change something there, and you're gonna feel better. So, and that's just what I want for people is to feel great, and part of that is putting appropriate stress on ourselves and rising to the occasion and meeting that stress. The other thing that I think is really important in this day and age is connecting with and being around other people of the same gender that can kind of be men together. And I don't mean just get together and drink some beers and watch football. Maybe, that's fine, but I think we can make a lot more out of that. Like this conversation we're having today, like be real, talk to your guy friends about like what's really happening in their sex lives and their exercise life and how they're keeping themselves being themselves. Like have these real conversations with men that you respect, and that's going to raise your testosterone level. You know what? It's been shown that your posture can change your testosterone level.
Yes.
So just doing like this and putting your hands back and putting your feet up, that changes your testosterone. Okay, that can increase it. Any kind of pose, and this comes like if you look at gorillas, I think that the silverback will do these poses where they're kind of like open, instead of like closed, and just opening like that can change your testosterone and make it higher. So there's just so much we can do, and I think all of that emerges out from authentic living. And if you're not feeling your best, then that's just feedback to help you become more authentic.
I agree with that, and I think that's what men need to do. They need to start taking their health seriously, start taking some DHEA, some natural testosterone supplements that could possibly help you. Eat right, eat clean, and shut off the porn, man. Go pound your wife for a while, your girlfriend.
Yeah. That's a huge one.
Porn crushes Yeah, porn crushes testosterone levels. That's what it does.
Totally.
You want to be you want to have no lead in your pencil? Go ahead. Go on
Yeah.
Pornhub all day. You know.
Yeah,
It's the worst thing.
It's a problem that a lot of people don't talk about. I bring it up with my patients, and it's amazing how prevalent this problem is, and how relieved people are when they get to admit it and get validated that, like, yeah, you and everyone else is having this problem. Like, so yes, get off the porn. That's
yeah. I was talking to one guy. He made a statement. He goes, "You want to increase your testosterone?" He goes, "Start eating like high quality organic beef liver and go sun your balls." I was like, "What the hell are you talking about? Go sun my balls?" I was like, and I read up on it. I was like, "Holy crap!" I'm like, "He ain't kidding. He ain't kidding." You know. And Doc, I'll tell you right now. I was like, several months ago, I was like so like moody and irritated and agitated and whatnot. So I went to go get my blood work done, and I remember it came back. It was like 300 nanograms per deciliter of blood. I'm like 41 years old, and I'm like, oh, what the hell? I need to change. And so I've been pounding for the last several months grass-fed beef, like ribeyes, cooked medium rare, organic fruits, organic vegetables, you know, high quality fats. And EFAs, and has
get
made
some of those
difference.
Organs too, the liver and the rest of the organs.
I got liver, kidneys, heart.
That's it, man.
Dude, it's made me mentally clearer. I'm not as moody. I'm not as bitchy anymore. You know,
For sure.
And my wife's like, you know, your mood's been a lot better. I was like, wow, you're right.
And
I'm like smiling more.
You're taking care of yourself, and that feels good. That's rewarding on its own. Yeah, I mean, save the bones and throw them in a pot and make the bone broth. But you know, just for the listeners, I know you get this, V, but for the listeners, in men, our fat produces estrogen, right? The more body fat you have, the worse your estrogen testosterone balance is going to be. And so, number one, training your body to burn fat. By eating low carbs, eventually you'll learn to burn fat. Doing some fasting. So I fast about 36 hours every week. I basically just don't eat anything on Monday and break my fast Tuesday morning, and then periodically I'll have a longer fast. By the way, when I fast from food, I'm also fasting from cannabis and caffeine. So that's my kind of weekly reset. But you know, it's so liberating to, number one, feel like, wow, I'm not that dependent on food. I can have a productive day without any. And it takes people a little time to get there, but anyone can get there with a little time. But then when I do go into food, what am I doing? Yeah, I've got like a liver pate that's high fat, you know, sitting in my fridge right now. I've got, you know, this, we just bought a half cow from the farm that's all grass-fed and organic. Like it's in my freezer, right?
Dustin, you're a man after my own heart.
But that can be all of us. And I think COVID's pushing people to be like, wow, I ought to have a freezer in my basement and some food stores down there. You know, it's absolutely, it's important to be prepared with some high quality nutrition.
You know, I was reading something. I was reading about, this was a while ago. It was talking about beef tartare, right? And they were talking about how, I think it was in France, or I believe it was in France, where beef tartare was like a staple that they would eat in this specific region of France. And the testosterone levels in men, the sperm motility, the quality of just the quality of individuals that were coming out of that region was just incredible. They stopped and they switched, and you see, you know, all the recent diet trends with, you know, I'm like a vegan and I like to eat nothing but plants all day and rack my gut biome and my digestive system, and then tell me that I'm detoxing when you're having nothing but diarrhea all day long. But anyway, you see the difference as soon as man went away from high quality organic animal products and started getting into like processed, you know, garbage. Just the destruction that it has caused immunologically is incredible.
Absolutely. I'm totally with you there. And, you know, I do want to put in a plug in for veganism. I think that it has a place. I might do it for a couple weeks or a few weeks at a time. I find it helps me in certain ways with meditation. And I think that there's a cycle for everything, right? Anyone that assumes if we're going to do the same thing every day all year round, like our ancestors did not have that opportunity, we don't need that either. But, you know, everything has its place. But I'm so with you. You know, I meet so many people that are vegan because they think that's the right thing for the environment. And then I ask them, well, you know, on all these farms that are growing vegetables, what are they using for fertilizer?
They're using rainbows.
Yes, exactly. It's freaking animal urine and animal
petrochemicals,
and that's what they're using. And like they're gonna need the animals to produce that fertilizer. And do you want that coming from like factory farmed, miserable, toxic beasts, or do you want that from happy cows that are growing, on the farm and eating the grass and all of that? And maybe sometime they'll be eating our cannabis compost as well, which can change their endocannabinoid systems and increase the quality of the meat. So there's just so much there to tie it all back together. But I know we're just about out of time. I want to just leave the listeners with a suggestion. If you love cannabis and you haven't tried this before, make yourself cannabis tea once or twice a day. Give it 2 weeks and see how you feel. I think that's just such a simple addition to a relationship with cannabis, and it's not going to get you stoned, and it's just so safe. So just throw a little nugget in whatever hot drink you're having or make your tea. Give that a shot.
Awesome.
Very well said.
Awesome.
Dr. Dustin in the house. Dustin, thank you so much for joining us. And folks, again, check out Dr. Dustin's his website, healer.com. Get those products. If you need to reach, and Doc, how do people reach out to you?
Yeah, so you can email or do the contact us on healer.com. That's fine. People that want individualized consults, I do that. We do phone call education sessions if people need specific advice about specific problems. And just have me back on the show. That's another good way. It's been 4 years is way too long. So let's do
way too long.
Absolutely. And folks, thank you all for listening in. With that being said, CJ, over and out.